You want to mess with my career and my freedom? Watch your entire life go down in flames. This is a really lengthy piece, so I hope you're up for the task. All of this occurred around 5 years ago, while I was working for a private trading business. The firm is a multinational, and it had created a new office in my city a few years before I started working for them. For those who are unaware, most prop stores, as far as I can tell, have a fairly high turnover rate. Simply throw everyone in and retain the ones that stay. Every 3 months, the firm where I worked hired new employees. It had room for roughly 120 merchants, although the office was never completely packed. Only approximately 5 of the 20 or so people employed each quarter made it beyond the 3-month internship term, and of those, only 1, or often none at all, made it past the subsequent 3-month probation phase. Before I joined, the firm had been in my city for 2 years, but there were only approximately 4 workers who could be considered permanent. Everyone else, roughly 10 people, was either on internship or probation, the first setup. I and approximately 25 other people were hired right out of university. The internship period paid quite well for a first job, around twice as much as any other entry-level employment in other financial institutions, plus bonuses after we went live, regardless of whether one is on internship, probation, or permanent, and I was really thrilled. I initially met my employer, a genuinely kind Indian man, during an industry day at our institution. That's where they gave me the IQ exams, which I passed. The workplace, like many other mid-sized businesses, had a rather flat management structure. We traders were at the bottom of the food chain. The HR/ops manager was above us, and the office manager was, well, the branch's boss. The employer granted time off almost any time you requested it, as long as the day's goals were met. That was his policy. The HR/ops manager, on the other hand, was his polar opposite, and then some. I mean it when I say this woman was a great babe. Gabby, as we'll name her. The causing event Gabby was the first person I encountered when I went to their headquarters for my final interview. I was enrolling at the front desk when she stormed out of her office, demanding some paperwork from the receptionist. The receptionist wanted to finish with me first, but she was sent to file storage. Our conversation proceeded as follows. Gabby, are you one of the newcomers? Yes, I said. I'm quite thrilled. Gabby, don't be like that. You don't seem to be going to make it. Why, you ask? Gabby, you're much too sensitive. A brief pause. Gabby, if you give me a little bit, I can put in a good word for you. This is a bribe. Ha, that's funny. Very amusing. Gabby, I'm not kidding. Give anything, and I'll make things very simple for you. Otherwise, I'll make certain you don't even get an interview. No, not at all. Gabby, you're right in front of my face. She also maintained her promise. She had me sit in a dark part of the waiting area, where no one could see me, but where I could hear the talks at the desk. The only reason I got an interview was because the manager was so pleased with me at our prior meeting that he came to check why my CV wasn't there. Gabby informed me that I had not submitted it. The receptionist mentioned seeing it someplace. Then, as the receptionist stated, I strolled up to the desk. It's right here. It was in the garbage. Gabby was the center of attention. Gabby had a furious hatred for me from the minute I was humiliated. Gabby, you see, was a micromanager, or more accurately, a nanomanager. She had us seek access if we wanted to visit sites other than those on her authorized list, and her list was pathetically insufficient for traders who gathered information from everywhere we could get. She would hold meetings at the most inconvenient times, but only when the branch manager was not there, and you could never leave to check on your positions during her long sessions. She had this irritating tendency of stealing my lunch, and when I challenged her about it, she basically told me to go myself. That's something I could live with. I just began bringing in 2 sets of meals and continued doing what I enjoyed. Gabby was a married woman with 2 children who was very attractive. I believe she loved the attention since she had a steady stream of men pick her up at the workplace for 2-hour lunches, and when she departed for home in the evening. However, not on Thursday. Her husband would come pick her up on Thursdays, pulling their kids behind. I believe they went out for a family meal or something. Gabby's mistakes. In round 1, our boss resigned approximately 2 months after I started. I believe he returned to India to marry or something, but he remained with the firm. I wished him the best of luck. None of the other permanent traders had the corporate experience necessary to take on a managerial job, 5 years or more, so they had to go elsewhere. Meanwhile, despite having only minimal understanding of futures markets, Gabby became the de facto leader of the branch. Her first blunder was delaying my promotion from internship to probation. I am a fantastic trader and was comfortably in the top 5 in my group. She promoted 20 of the 20 she liked, kept me and another man on as interns, and dismissed 4. Another recruiting drive took place at the same time, and another 20 or so interns were recruited. I knew it was our feud revived and remixed, and I was amazed she hung on to it for so long. It was especially odd since my old supervisor had just promoted me from the simulator to an actual trading account before he departed. But I kept my head down and continued to study, often seeking assistance from my previous supervisor and the permanent workers. After another 3 months, I was startled to see that I was still not on probation, despite the fact that all of the new recruits from the second batch had been promoted and I was easily the best and only one trading live. I felt confident in my abilities. All of the permanent men agreed. I was constantly asked for guidance by the first group I joined. To their credit, a few of them were excellent, but the most of them were still on sim, and no one ever proceeded to probation while on sim. However, if you were excellent, you could go live while on internship, which is what happened to me. So I was a live trader generating fantastic money, but I was still on internship and had been turned down twice. There was something I couldn't let go of. I made the decision to speak with Gabby personally. I contacted the senior men and explained my case, being cautious not to cast a negative light on her. They pledged to assist me, and they did so. She handed me my promotion about a month after she passed me over the second time, and I was now on probation. She was still uncertain of her ability and terrified of the permanent merchants at the moment. Those men were godlike. Another review and recruiting campaign 2 months following my promotion. I did not get a promotion. Despite the fact that just 2 of them were trading live, the group I began with was now permanent. The probationary group I was with was all upgraded to permanent status. The interns in front of me were all promoted to probation, while another set was recruited. I let it go with the hope that she had gotten it out of her system. Unfortunately, she had not. Second round. 3 months have passed. I'm trading live and enjoying it, despite the fact that I'm still on probation. An appraisal is conducted, and I'm not promoted, despite the fact that, contract to contract, I was practically on par with the permanent staff. The group that discovered me on probation elevated a guy to permanent status, and none of them were alive. The group behind me got up to me, and a fresh set of interns were recruited. I, too, couldn't let this one go. I contacted the initial 4 permanent workers, who were now my very close friends, and told them I was going to do the same thing as the last time. It just didn't work this time. Gabby had grown into her wicked power and bluntly refused to consider my advancement, even when proof that I was worth it was offered to her. Her reasoning went something like this: I'm the boss, therefore I can do whatever the heck I want. But I wasn't having it, so I turned to my old employer for assistance. At the time, he had been elevated to the position of Africa's chief of operations. Given my performance, he was honestly astonished that I was still on probation. Needless to say, the order came down from on high, and Gabby seemed to be 6 pineapples at the same time as she gave me my letter. And I assumed that was the end of the story. I was so incorrect. She hired this girl, let's call her Sue, in the following round of hiring. Sue was a clever person in general, but she lacked the emotional quotient to deal with the market. Trading, I was taught, requires 2 mental aspects: ick and ache. You can't raise your IQ, but you can develop your EQ to cope with the multiple pressures that come with the job. Sue had more than enough of the IQ element, but not so much of the EQ. Not to worry, you can work on it. To summarize, the office now had about 70 people working for it. Over 30 of them were permanent employees, including me, but only 11 were actively trading. Another 20 or so were on trial, but just 3 were trading in real time. There were no live interns. The office needed to be profitable in order to remain open, which meant that the money from the 14 live traders was covering everyone's wages, rent, supplies, health insurance, pensions, and so on. Needless to say, corporate was not seeing a lot of returns from our branch, and as I subsequently learned from my old supervisor, they were contemplating closing it down and laying us off. But I'm digressing. Stay tuned for the next part.